You're listening to Catalyst for Change, and my name is Jessica Huckabee, your host. I started this podcast to learn what makes people resilient after challenging events and how they've used those series of events as a catalyst for change in their life. You'll hear stories of resiliency and strength, so get ready, sit back, and be prepared to be inspired. I'm really happy to have Clint Pearman on my show today. So Clint and I work together as brain injury educators, and I really see him as a mentor. As a veteran, Clint served over 31 years in the United States Marine Corps and has had multiple deployments and held numerous positions in leadership. He's currently in the Doctor of Health and Wellness Psychology program at Ashford University, where his doctoral research focuses on identifying the principles, strategies, and behavior for developing personal and organizational culture. So thank you so much, Clint, for offering to speak to me today about your background and experience. And you mentioned that you've served 31 years in the Marines and have retired. And so you've had different experiences throughout your life. Can you tell me about some of those experiences that really were a catalyst for change in your life and that kind of made you who you are today?
Oh, wow. Thank you for that question, Jessica. And I'm excited to be on your show. I've heard so much about it, and now I get a chance to actually speak on it. So, my background and resiliency, I have to go back to growing up when I was living home with my dad. My dad did some amazing things that I did not understand back then that turned into amazing lessons 30 years later when I look back in retrospect. So one of the lessons was at the ripe old age of 13. And I should preface that with I was born in New York.
Okay.
And at the age of 13, my parents decided they wanted to retire and take me and my little brother out of New York and move us to a farm, yep, F-A-R-M, farm
Wow.
in Florida. Now, but they didn't even tell us. December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, 1969, they packed up, we got in our vehicles, and we drove to Florida. I thought we were just going on a summer vacation. We get there and my dad, now I should have been suspicious, but at the age of 13 and my little brother was 10, you really can't figure this out. We don't know why our dad is leaving every weekend for like the last 6 months. We know now he was leaving to go to Florida to clear out this land that he bought that we were going to turn into a farm.
And what inspired him?
Did you say what inspired him?
Yeah.
Well, crazy enough, my dad had I don't know of any experience my dad had as being being a farmer. He was an engineer on a train. He drove a subway. He was the conductor on a subway train. But I believe from my mother saying this, that he always had a passion to get me and my little brother out of New York, first of all. And then I think it was my mother had this crazy idea to build a farm. And you'll hear what happened when we got to that farm. So I don't know. The other thing was we thought in 1968, my big brother was drafted by the New York Jets and then he was traded to the Miami Dolphins. So for years, I actually thought we moved so that we could be closer to watch my big brother play football. But that wasn't it, because about a couple of months after we moved there, he got traded to a team. He got traded to the New York Jets. So that didn't work. That didn't work out at all.
Oh, wow. So he was drafted by he was drafted to Florida, then he was drafted by the Jets. So he was no longer in Florida even.
He was drafted by the Baltimore Colts,
okay,
traded to Miami, and then after he got to Miami, I believe he was cut, and then he went to Canada and started playing for the Toronto Argonauts in the Canadian Football League for the next, I think, like 10 years.
Wow. Wow, what an interesting family you have. Yeah, so it sounds like you learned about like how to start over, how to, build resiliency from your father. who decided he wanted a different life for you and your brother, it sounded like. Is that correct?
Yes, and I have to say, moving to that farm, the first lesson we learned was this. When you talk about resiliency, when you
Yeah.
live on a farm, you have to go to work before school and after school. Most kids, they may have a part-time job after school,
Yeah.
not when you live on a farm. So when we moved there, we built a farm, and it was not a money-making farm. I often joke about this. It wasn't a farm to make money. They were retired. They didn't need money. It was a farm, I believe, to teach me and my little brother some life skills and to amuse my parents.
Oh, funny.
Because first thing we realized, when school began and the animals started showing up, chickens and ducks, and it wasn't a growing plant type of farm, it was an animal farm. Yeah, it was an animal farm. We had chickens, ducks, goats, we had cows, not to mention the dogs.
Wow.
And so before school, we had to get up 5 o'clock in the morning and go do stuff. That just up, I did not like that. And then I'd go to school and come back home and have to now do more chores. That's where I learned how to set goals.
Okay.
The first goal I ever learned, the first big goal I ever set in the 9th grade was to get the heck off that farm as fast as I could.
Oh, wow. So you learned about goal setting at a young age because you were like, I need to get out of here, out of the situation. So how did you eventually get out of that area and get on to your life?
So the way I got out of the farm life was, I was already an athlete, but I stepped it up. I played football, basketball, baseball, ran track. I even tried to get my high school team in Florida to put up a ice hockey team so that I never had to go home. So by the time I got to the end of the 9th grade, I was already involved in every sports. And if you know anything about sports, you learn all type of life lessons. And that's where my life lessons began. And then the second time I set a big goal was when I realized I was pretty good in track. And I set a goal, but I first asked the coach, hey, coach, how can I get a scholarship to run track or pole vault? And he told me what to do.
Yeah.
And then I spent from the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade pursuing that goal. But here's the lesson I learned. I reached the goal, but it was the wrong goal. He told me I had to be able to pole vault at least 13 feet.
Wow.
That was great because that allowed me to set some high school records, but it wasn't enough to get the scholarship I needed. So the next route to get off that farm was I joined the Marine Corps.
Okay. And so what did the Marines teach you? It sounds like the Marines are like one of the tougher services that I've heard about.
Yeah, that's what they say. And most Marines will probably confirm that story. But I should clarify what they're really referring to is for the basic services, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and the Coast Guard and the National Guards. National Guard goes to the Army boot camp. Our boot camp is generally the hardest of them all. But there are some other trainings within the services that may be harder than the Marine Corps. So I learned going through Marine Corps boot camp how to be focused, how to be committed, and to expand on one of the lessons my dad taught me growing up on that farm was never, ever quit. And I could add one little story he taught me about quitting was, you know, when you build a farm, you have to do a lot of stuff. And one of the things we had to do was to build a set. Now, most people don't even know what that is. And when you live on a farm, you have to dig a big giant hole that your toilet uses. And we built the house we lived in. So my job was to build this or to dig this hole. And this hole is about 8 feet deep and about 7 feet in circumference. So as I'm digging this hole, I ran into a big giant rock, probably a big giant rock that I couldn't get through. And my dad gave me a sledgehammer, said, just start hitting it. I
Oh my
started.
gosh.
So this begins at like 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning. I begin, and I'm in the 9th grade, hitting this rock. That's like 8 or 9 o'clock. By around 10 o'clock, it ain't moving. I said, Dad, this is not working. He said, yes, it is. You just can't see it's not working yet. Keep hitting it. By around 6 o'clock that night, my mother is now telling my dad, hon, you need to let him come in. You can't keep him out there.
Oh my gosh.
I said, Dad, I got a better idea. He said, what? He says, can we blow the rock up? Now I'm in the 9th grade. He says,
Yeah.
what do you mean? I said, we have dynamite. No, that's not dynamite. We have gunpowder. So well,
Yeah.
can we get the gunpowder and blow it up? Now, I didn't know then, but my dad knew that won't work. But he allowed me to test it. He said, okay, go ahead and let's see what you got. So I
Yeah.
finally got the gunpowder, did what I saw them do in the cowboy days. I rolled it up into a sheet of paper and everything, stuck it under the, how you gonna light it? He said, well, he gave me this string, he put some gasoline on it, and he said, light it and then jump out of the hole as fast as you can.
Oh my gosh.
So I lit it, and I couldn't get out of the hole. So my mother is screaming, get him, get him. My dad grabs me. He's not even running. He's just taking his time because he realizes it's not going to blow up. And he just grabs me, and he pulls me out of the hole. And right after he got to get me out of the hole, the gunpowder lit, and it was just a little big fire. And I realized, oh, that won't work. He said, good, now get back in there and start hitting it with that rock.
Oh my gosh.
Continue hitting it with that sledgehammer. So I got back in. By 9:45 that night, it broke. And when it broke, I realized, wow, if you just don't quit, you can almost accomplish anything. And I've carried that never quit attitude all throughout my Marine Corps career. There were numerous opportunities where the never quitting mindset came into play throughout my entire time. And I'll tell you one story that really an amazing story. In 1975, I'm on a ship in Spain. Well, I guess that's old, and there's no secrets about this now. So in 1975, I'm on a ship in Spain, and this ship is going through a test that the type of ship I was on, it never, ever passed this test. It's called, the Navy will know this. Any sailors, they will know this test. And the ship was the USS Simon Lake. The test is called the Battle Efficiency Test. It's where they test the ship to make sure it's ready to go to battle. Now, this ship was a nuclear weapons carrying ship. We were a submarine tender, so we carried nuclear weapons for submarines. We didn't launch them, we only supplied them to the submarines. And in order to get into where the nuclear weapons were, it was like an act of Congress. Had to get permission to open up the thing to put the weapons in and to put it on the submarine. Well, what the test involved was these inspectors setting up the test to the point where you cannot pass it. The only way to get into where the nuclear weapons are were to get through the Marines. The Marines stood guard in an entry that was the only entrance from the ship. And what the inspectors did was they went down a couple of levels and then they would simulate. Well, what they did was they simulated a security alarm. So they said someone broke into the nuclear weapons. Well, how did they do that? They broke into the nuclear weapon cage, and when the Marines went on alert to go down and rescue them or get them out, they would simply say, bang, 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 you've been killed. Bang, 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 you've been killed. And that's how they prevented this type of ship from ever winning this award. Well, we were about to quit because there was nothing we could do by the book. Got to get it. There was nothing we could do by the book, which by the book was you have to go down through this cage. Well, they were shooting us, simulated
shooting.
When we went that, and I said, no, let's open up what was called the well. That's where they put the weapons in with this giant crane. And we were told, no, we don't have authority to do that. Yes, we do. The Marine detachment has authority over the ship when there is a security violation. This is a drill. Let's open up the cage. So everybody got, now I'm just a young corporal in the Marine Corps, been in about a year. So all the big wigs, the people in charge, they're trying to figure out, can we do this? The Marine Detachment Gunnery Sergeant says, we're going to do it because we're in charge. That was a great idea, Clint, because we didn't quit. So we opened up. Now you got to picture this. To do this, Congress has to approve it. We got the ship to open up this giant hole with where the cranes let the weapons in.
Yeah.
I and another Marine were selected to simulate, well, not simulated, we rappelled down this hole, which is about 4 stories high, got into where we thought the guys, the testers were. They don't know we're coming. And we kicked in the back door with weapons and yelled, freeze. They froze and freaked out and realized no one had ever done that. That ship was the first ship that was a submarine tender to ever win the battle efficiency E. Because
so thinking outside the box.
And oh, great point. That's what my dad taught me when he let me use the gunpowder, was to keep thinking out of the box. And the other one was to never quit. So when you talk about resiliency, or what I call never quitting, that's one of the 3 main lessons I learned from the Marine Corps.
Yeah, so thinking outside the box is what your dad taught you. And in that circumstance, when you had to jig that latrine for 24 hours, you're digging that latrine, it seems like.
It's not a latrine. It's so in the country, they have big holes.
Yeah.
That they cover up, that the cesspool, your toilet bowl is a pipe, it runs into that.
Septic.
That's the cesspool.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Now you mentioned being a TBI, traumatic brain injury educator now in your day job. Now, can you tell me a little bit about what led you into that, since you spent so long in the Marines and you had all these interesting experiences, and now you're a traumatic brain injury educator? What led from point A to point B?
Absolutely. Interestingly, I was actually on my way to Mexico. I had set up an opportunity to live in a bed and breakfast while I completed a PhD. I was at the dissertation phase when I stopped off in San Diego just to tell my daughter and granddaughter, hey, I'm moving to Mexico for the next 2 years to work on my dissertation. And they went to boohoo crying about, Dad, you can't go. The cartel is going to get you and stuff. What are you talking about? So I this was in 2012, kind of looked it up and realized, it's probably not a good idea to go to Mexico. And just by coincidence, my speaking agent called me and told me the military is looking for a person to be a traumatic brain injury education and training specialist. I said, what's that got to do with me? He said, well, my doctoral research, the area of my doctoral research I was working on was something called self-directed neuroplasticity, which is all about the brain. And my agent felt you had an educational background that was enough to get the job. And I'm thinking, well, I don't really want a job because I'm retired. He said, yeah, but it would be great to put on your resume that you were a brain injury specialist. So I said, oh, okay, I'll check it out. So I called up and spoke to the person, and they explained to me what it was, which really was an education person that taught everyone from the medical field to service members to the general community how to diagnose, treat, prevent, and rehabilitate people that have had traumatic brain injury. So it's an education position, which is what I was going to do after I finished this doctorate. I was going to go teach somewhere. I think I had a job lined up at San Diego State to teach. So I thought, okay, I'll take the job for 2 months because that's all they wanted me for. At the end of 2 months, I realized I loved what I was doing. And just by coincidence, they decided that they would make it permanent, and they offered me the opportunity to stay. And I said, absolutely. So I then realized I better really figure out what the heck I'm doing now. And then it became a life passion because in the world of traumatic brain injuries, the military suffers probably more than anyone for a couple of reasons. One, most service members don't know that they've had TBIs, and then those that know, they're afraid to report their traumatic brain injuries because they're afraid it will make them look weak. And then those in the leadership positions don't know enough to encourage and inspire their service members to report their TBIs, and then those in the medical field may not have the training to treat the traumatic brain injury effectively, and then we have service members that spend years in the service suffering and struggling with traumatic brain injury symptoms, and that became a lifelong passion for me to educate all the stakeholders involved in this process so that we don't have service members that have to struggle and suffer.
That's really a good point. And it sounds like a wonderful thing that you're doing. Now, you mentioned that you've had traumatic brain injuries in your military career. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I actually did not have any idea I had a TBI until I started teaching it, which kind of also expands on what I mentioned about most service members don't even know they had a TBI. I didn't realize I had I initially realized I had 6 TBIs when I began teaching this. And then about a year later, one of the students in the class brought up something that made me realize, holy smoke, I was in a car accident where I was knocked out too, which was another TBI. So I've had 4 TBIs that were not military related, 3 that were military related. 1 occurred during the first, so 2 of the military ones were training related accidents. Well, actually, no, while I was in the military. 1 was training related, 1 was playing sports in the military. I played football while in the military, had a TBI. And then during the first Gulf War, 1 running to jump inside a bunker when a Scud missile attack came on. I don't even know if it was the blast from the missile or me jumping in the bunker when the missile went off, or when the Scud missile went off, waking up later with everybody saying, "Are you all right?" I had no idea that was a TBI. Nobody else considered it was a TBI either, but this was back in the 90s before we even were focused like we are now on this TBI thing. And then I've had several TBIs outside of the military from different events, like I play sports. I play basketball, playing basketball, and then 2 car accidents that at the time had no idea they were TBIs. Now, the interesting thing about that, though, is this. What made me actually realize I needed to do something about it was this. I felt I retired in 2006, and I knew my memory was a little slow. I thought it was because I was getting old. I knew my focus was not that good. If you gave me a 7-digit phone number, I had to write it down word, letter by letter. I knew my memory was not that good. My focus wasn't that good, but I just thought it was because I was getting old. And then one day, while at the facility I work at, coming in the morning, I was putting my pants on, and I got one leg in, and the other leg got caught, and I fell over. And I fell over thinking, oh no, man, my balance is all messed up. Man, I'm really getting old. I need to go. So I showed up in the clinic, and I went and asked one of the doctors in there, one of the specialists, if there was something I could do about my TBI symptoms now that I know I have these vestibular problems, memory. And I love what he said. He said, oh, you probably don't have TBI symptoms. You probably have vestibular issues from those TBIs in the past. Go see the vestibular person. That person simply educated me, which was interesting because this is what I was doing with service members, was educating them on the exact same stuff he just educated me on. And then he said this, what's your memory like? No, he asked me if I was sleeping. No, I get about 4 hours of sleep, 2012. I thought that was normal. As you get older, after the vestibular guy taught me some stuff, he sent me to see the sleep person. After the sleep person educated me on some stuff, which was the exact same stuff I'm educating people on. My sleep problems went away. My vestibular problems went away. I went and saw the speech and language. I couldn't understand, why did I need to see a speech and language pathologist or a specialist? Because that deals with memory.
Okay.
Some stuff about memory. And today, You can give me a 10-digit number. I can memorize the number. My memory is better. If I go to sleep now, if you don't interrupt me, I won't wake up for 7.5 to 8 hours. My focus is better, concentration is better.
How did they get you to that point?
Say that again?
How did they get you to that point, Clint?
As we all know in the TBI arena, the single most important component to concussion or mild TBI treatment and rehabilitation, the single most important component is education.
Yeah.
You just need to know some stuff. So in the case of vestibular, the vestibular specialist simply educated me on some simple thing. This was interesting because he only took about 5 minutes and taught me some stuff to improve my balance and said, just start doing it. And for the next maybe 3 or 4 weeks, my balance went, it went from not being able to stand on one leg with my eyes closed, because when I began, I couldn't stand on one leg, close my eyes, and cross my arms. I would immediately fall over. I thought that's what happens when you get old. However, he taught me some stuff, some exercises that I did every night before I went to bed and every morning when I woke up for only about, I think I did it for 1 minute, and then I went to 2 minutes. I did these exercises to improve my balance. After about 30 days, I don't have a balance problem. The sleep specialist, Daniel Kim. Daniel taught me some stuff about sleep from listening to him train, and then I read the stuff we use as part of the organization I belong with. I studied that stuff. There's 11 different steps they teach. I mastered every single one of them, starting with this: sleep hygiene, turning my bedroom into a sleep cave, meaning getting all the stuff out and only using the bed for sex and sleep.
Yeah.
No more reading, no more watching TV, no more meditating. No. When I go in the bedroom, I instantly get tired because my brain has been rewired to think, oh, he's getting ready to go to sleep.
Yeah.
That's
So
sleep
important.
hygiene. And
Yeah.
that was education. All I did was learn stuff. The sleep and language specialist taught me some memory techniques, focus and concentration techniques. And that's how I solved. I don't think I have any of those problems now. That's how I solved those
Just
problems.
some education by the right people, and now you're able to educate other service members, veterans, the community on how to overcome the challenges that they've had with a mild traumatic brain injury or concussion. Now, for some of those more difficult, I mean, I know some people listening may be thinking, well, I've had a moderate to severe traumatic brain injury and I'm still having symptoms, and, and they're probably still struggling. But so it doesn't fix everything, all the education, but it does help a great deal, it sounds like.
Absolutely. We have a saying that in the mild TBI arena, 50% of people, after they've had the TBI, about 50% will still have symptoms 30 days later. However, within the next 90 days, and this is without treatment, within the next 90 days, 80% of people will fully recover from the mild TBI. Mm-hmm. Now, that other 20%, they need treatment, but that's the minority, that other 20%. Now, some of that 20%, depending on the severity of their TBI and the severity of their symptoms, sometimes they're going to need education and training to learn how to mitigate those symptoms. And sometimes they're going to have to learn to live with, like I had learned to, not even knowing, I had learned to live with the minor memory, the balance problems. I had accepted it until I realized education could help. Now, if you've experienced moderate or severe, under those conditions, you should really be under the care of a medical professional that's up to date on traumatic brain injury treatment and rehabilitation. And that can involve occupational therapists, other types of therapists, and a physician.
Yeah, no, really good point. And but yeah, most of what we're seeing is mild traumatic brain injury. So what you're saying about education is really relevant for any age group. And so wonderful. It sounds like you've done a lot to improve yourself through, from the time you were 13 when you moved to a farm and were learning not to give up and getting involved in sports and just not giving up on that, getting involved in the military and learning to think outside of the box, and then eventually going on to happily retire, and then educate others, just stumbling into like a really good career path for yourself and helping others overcome some of the challenges that they've had from mild traumatic brain injury or even other types of brain injury. So how are you doing these days? Is there anything that you think that we haven't covered or you think that we should know about you?
Well, about me, I'll add this. Under the heading, and I know your show is about resiliency, in this era right now, the COVID-19 era, one of the most significant issues people are struggling with is the stress of maybe not working, of having to be quarantined at home, and not knowing about the future. It can lead to an enormous amount of stress. And we all need a couple of things that lead to resiliency or help with resiliency. And one of it is you got to eat healthy. You got to learn how to eat better, eat healthy. You have to and there's only three things. You have to exercise.
Yeah.
And exercise is one of the most powerful tools you can use for building what we would call your stress and resiliency muscle. Or a better term is your what's the word that means? Your baseline, where you originally started at. And it'll come to me in a moment. So you wanna eat healthy, you wanna exercise, and then this. We all need to find ways to manage our stress directly, and meditation is one of the most powerful things you can do. But the problem with meditation is most people have a problem trying to just sit and meditate. That's what I hear all the time. I can never do that. Well, there's another form of meditation that is just as powerful, if not more powerful, which is actually the focus of my new doctoral research, and it's Tai Chi, which is often called moving meditation. So
Okay.
What are the other things I do, and what I like to say my side hustle or my part-time gig outside of my daytime job is I provide Tai Chi training focused on helping people manage stress and develop resiliency. And if you're interested in that, Google Tai Chi, find a lesson or someone that can teach you how to do it, or reach out and find me.
Yeah.
And I am in the process of developing a virtual TBI training program right now. And if you're in the Oceanside area, you can join any of my social distancing Tai Chi groups at the Carlsbad Pier, Oceanside, and 2 Oceanside parks.
Wonderful.
It's all for fun to help
Yeah.
improve your stress management.
Oh, that's really good. And in the show notes, I'll have more information about Tai Chi, how to get in touch with you. Maybe people want to ask about your research or your doctorates, and what you're teaching over in your day job. So I'll have all of that information in the show notes. And I really appreciate your time today, Clint. You're a wealth of information, and I feel really honored that you're able to talk to me today. So thank you.
Oh, Jessica, I'm honored that you had me on your show. Thank you so much.
Of course. All right. Well, thanks. You've been listening to Catalyst for Change, and my name is Jessica Huckabee, your host. Join us next week for another story of resiliency. And please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and feel free to leave me a comment or email me at catalystforchange20@gmail.com, or on Facebook, we have a page at Catalyst for Change Resiliency.